Hmm.
Uh, Andrew says, is Charles aware of the cultural trend known as dark academia? And if so, can he comment on it and tell us what he thinks? Seems like something he would get behind.
I've never heard of it. I don't know the first thing about it. Dark academia. Now this is the second thing. Dark academia. I don't know anything about it. Is that like vocal fry? Dark academia.
Well, since it's dark, so we know like light is liberalism, right? Like the Enlightenment and the Dark Ages is when Christendom ruled the world. So I'm sure it's in that same vein.
Wow, listen to this. I've never ever heard of this.
What is it?
This is a Wikipedia source of all truth.
Uh oh.
Dark academia is a social media aesthetic and subculture concerned with higher education, writing/poetry, the arts, and classical Greek and collegiate Gothic architecture. The subculture is associated with ancient art and classic literature. Aesthetic. The fashion of the 1930s and 40s, sounds good, figures prominently in the dark academia aesthetic, particularly clothing associated with attendance at Oxbridge, Ivy League schools, and prep schools of the period. A number of the articles of clothing most associated with the aesthetic are cardigans, blazers, dress shirts, plaid skirts, Oxford shoes, and clothing made of houndstooth and tweed. Its color palette consisting mainly of black, white, beige, browns, dark green, and occasionally navy blue. I've never heard of this. The subculture draws on idealized aesthetics of higher education and academia, often with books and libraries featuring prominently. Activities such as calligraphy, museum visits, libraries, coffee shops, and all-night studying sessions are common among proponents. That's like trying to get a decent grade.
This is a really dark concept, apparently. This is
Dark,
really
yeah,
a
it's dark, all right.
nightmare.
It's called sanity. Seasonal imagery of autumn is also common. Caught me already. Imagery of Gothic and collegiate Gothic architecture, candlelight, dark wooden furniture, and dense cluttered rooms often occurs. The subculture has been described as maximalist and nostalgic. Universities that are often featured in dark academia image boards include Oxbridge, Durham University, the University of Edinburgh, the University of Glasgow, and Harvard University. I've been at all those places. The subculture shares similarities with goth subculture, tending to romanticize the finding of beauty in poetry and dark themes. Well, I don't have seen any dark themes yet. Tim Brinkoff of Big Think. There's something. What's Big Think? Multimedia web portal. Okay. Has stated that, quote unquote, moody architecture and philosophical pessimism are key aspects of the aesthetic, as opposed to what? Wokery? Wokery is very optimistic. Hannah Southwick of USA Today. Oh, there you go. USA Today, that excreter of sanity, has described it as a quote unquote melancholic aesthetic, citing a fashion stylist who described it as boarding school meets goth enthusiast. Wow. History. In 2015, the trend emerged on social media site Tumblr with the creation of a book club that centered around classic and Gothic novels. The aesthetic then grew into a distinct subculture, seeing a wave of popularization on Instagram led by Ryan Taylor. I've never heard of these people, and Maria Teresa Negro in 2017. Dark academia rose in popularity during the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I can figure that. Increased interest in dark academia has been credited to the shutdown of schools. Well, I can see that too. If you can't go to school, the ability to actually go to school is kind of exciting. Wow. Never heard of this stuff. A number of classic works of literature, such as Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, Maurice by E.M. Forster, as well as the works of writers such as Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley, i.e., writers, have been cited as either influential or popular among the subculture or fitting within its aesthetics. Donna Tartt's novel, what a name, Donna Tartt. The Secret History, published in 1992, which tells the story of a murder that takes place with a group of classic students at an elite New England college has been credited as being the inspiration for the trend. Other more recent books, such as R.F. Kuang's novel Babel, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, If We Were Villains by Emma Rio, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, and Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, Under the Porticos by S. Charpentier, have also been included. A number of films and TV series have also been credited as fitting into the aesthetic. The 1989 film, The Dead Poets Society, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Reception, blah, blah, blah. Oh, here we go. Criticism. Okay. Dark academia has been criticized for a variety of reasons, including the aesthetic's perceived Eurocentrism. Oh, lack of diversity and glamorization of unhealthy lifestyle choices. You mean like not being locked down? Like being able to go to school? Okay. Critics of the aesthetic have argued that the English literary canon from which it draws inspiration is an overwhelmingly white one. With Tim Brinkoff claiming that associated content creators prefer to discuss Oscar Wilde and Emily Dickinson over Toni Morrison or James Baldwin.
That's because Toni Morrison sucks. Jazz sucked. That's
well,
why.
I was going to say they prefer good authors to bad ones. Okay, great. Sarah Burton, a sociology fellow at City University of London, has noted that the aesthetic contains little representation of, quote, most women, working class, people of color, fatness, people with low economic or cultural capital, disability, caring in domestic activities and labor, especially the enjoyment of these, motherhood, queerness, and the mundanity of academic life. You know, I'm being forced into endorsing it now.
Efforts have been made to incorporate literary works from Black authors such as Langston Hughes into dark academia. That's because Langston Hughes is actually good. We're not adding him because he's Black, guys. He's actually good.
I just, what a bunch of. All right. I can't read anymore. I can't do this. You know what? I'm all for it.
Oh,
dark
my
academia
goodness.
rules. I mean, what is the? But see, if it's dark academia, they're saying dark academia doesn't have enough. It has too much whiteness in it.
Well, no. What really stuck out to me is this Tim Brinkoff guy saying moody architecture and philosophical pessimism. Moody architecture, like what's like? That's such a weak criticism. Moody architecture. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't know. I think philosophical pessimism is justified by the fact that people like Brinkoff are taken seriously as cultural commentators. So maybe there's a reason to be philosophically pessimistic at a time when people like that have big mouths. Not that that's a bad thing.
You know, but
I have a big mouth myself.
But what's funny is, like, as you're going through this Wikipedia article, it's very nuanced, kind of a little bit more subtle, like digs the whole time. It's very subtle. And to me, I could sort of see the intent. Like, I could see it was making these liberals really unhappy, but there's really nothing concrete that they could say. But then finally, when we got to the criticism one, then it's just bald-faced hatred. Eurocentric, how dare you? Lack of diversity. Rah! You know, like...
Well, again, if you've got problems with Eurocentrism, stop speaking European languages. Stop using European technology. Stop wearing European clothing. Stop eating European food and using European medicine. Sit in the mud and eat grubs.
Without even knowing what this was, I was able to call it, too, because these people are so unimaginative. Oh, dark academia, right? Like... Of course, and it was exactly what we would guess it would be, even though it doesn't. What's interesting too? What's interesting too? What they said, it actually is completely contradictory. You didn't read this section, Charles. One writer compared it to the contemporary cottagecore lifestyle aesthetic, saying that while cottagecore requires a home in the country, and leisure time for crafting, dark academia's simple act of putting on a blazer and reading Dostoevsky is far more doable, end quote. What is so dark about cottagecore? I don't actually literally cottagecore is literally the opposite of dark.
What is cottagecore?